correct the colors of this photo. And it nailed it. Let's get it to zoom in on the bird and make it ultra detailed. Holy smokes, this is good. Alright, let's get it to create a model sheet of this character, including a front, back, and side view. And this is also correct. Let's get it to turn the text into Chinese. And it also got this correct while keeping the font and everything else consistent. So this new and free AI image editor called Qwen Image Edit just dropped. And this is probably the best image editor you can use right now. Best of all, it's completely free and open source. They've already released the models, so you can download it and run it offline for unlimited times. So in this video, I'm going to show you all the incredible things you can do with it and compare it with another leading open source editor called Flux Kontext Dev. Plus, of course, I'm going to show you step by step how to install this on your computer so you can run it locally for free. Let's jump right in. So first of all, let's look at their announcement page and some of the demos that they've published. Qwen Image Edit is really good at accurately portraying your reference images. So for example, you can input this image of a character and you can generate additional images of it doing all sorts of things, like painting on this canvas, or cooking something, or playing the guitar, or doing some magic. And notice that for all these examples, the character looks completely consistent with the input image. Notice like the facial features, including the eyes, the ears, and the whiskers over here are consistent across all these generations. Plus, this white t-shirt with the Qwen logo and text are also correct across all these generations. So this is really good at generating new images of an existing reference character. So I mean, with this tool, you can take that same capybara character and generate all these different illustrations. It's also really good at generating different views of an existing photo. So for example, if we have this input image, we can generate the front view like this. Or same with this one, we can generate the front view of this cow. And here's another example. Now conversely, you can take a front view image and generate a side view like this. Or here's another example. You can also generate the back view of this crow like this, or this lion like this. And of course, this is really good at micro-editing certain features. For example, we can replace this design on his t-shirt with the text Qwen, and then we can turn this into Ghibli style, or 3D cartoon style, or chibi style. And note that you can do all of this with just a text prompt. So you don't need to do any like manual brushing or editing. Here's another example of micro editing. So you can take an existing photo and you can add a sign that says "Welcome to Penguin Beach" in this photo. And notice that this sign blends in seamlessly with the photo. The sign's shadow is also aligned with the original lighting. So this is extremely useful for manipulating images. Here's another example of micro editing. So here we have this strand of hair over here, which we want to get rid of. Well, you can just prompt it to remove the strand of hair, and this is what you get. And notice that it preserves the rest of the details of the original photo. Here's another crazy example of micro editing, and how good it is at understanding your prompt. So you can specify to only change the letter N to blue. And that's exactly what it does while keeping the rest of the letters the same as the original photo. It's also really good at swapping the background. So here's the input photo. Well, you can change the background to a beach like this, or into a classroom with this text on the chalkboard like this. And here's another impressive thing. Notice that her shadow on this beach also matches her original pose. And with this tool, you can change the clothes of any person in any photo. In fact, you can probably remove clothes as well. But of course, I can't show this on YouTube. It's also really good at editing text while keeping the original style and font of the text. So for example, if this is your original photo with health insurance, well, you can change health insurance to financial planning, and notice that it preserves the original Scrabble design of these letters. You can also change it to Chinese like this. I mean, this is so damn good at micro-editing anything in the poster. So for example, you can choose to edit this title to something like this. Or you can choose to edit this snippet of text with this. You just specify what you want to replace in the prompt. And of course, instead of replacing text, you can also replace the characters, and notice that it preserves the same design as the original poster. Now, these are just some of their demos on their announcement page. Let's actually test this out ourselves to see how good this is. And specifically, I'm going to test Qwen Image Edit with the current leading open source image editor called Flux Kontext Dev. This is also really damn good. In fact, if you haven't heard of Flux Kontext Dev, I highly recommend you watch this video where I review it and go over how to install it on your computer. Alright, so first of all, let's test some micro editing and also background swapping. Here's my input photo, and for the prompt, I put she is wearing sunglasses and a red bikini, change the background to a post-apocalyptic scene with a massive explosion. And here is the results from Qwen Image Edit. You can see that it does preserve her original pose, plus she is wearing a red bikini, and the background is a post-apocalyptic scene with explosions. Plus it even preserves the lamp and the mic and the laptop with the logo. This is such a powerful tool. Now, surprisingly, Flux Kontext Dev is also not bad. So it's also able to preserve the lamp and the mic and the laptop, and her pose is also correct. The only issue is she's still wearing this vest, plus this collar part is also not correct. So, just from this initial comparison, it does seem like Flux Kontext Dev is a bit more censored. It's kind of hesitant to get her to wear a bikini. Also, I would say the background of this generation isn't really a post-apocalyptic scene, whereas for Qwen Image Edit, this is more of what I was going for. Alright, next I'm going to input this photo, which I deliberately messed up the brightness and contrast and saturation and white balance. And for your reference, here is what the original photo looked like. So I messed everything up, and then for the prompt I put correct the colors of this photo. And here's what I got from Qwen Image Edit. This is actually really good. I mean, note that the color data of this image are almost completely gone. Like, once I change the brightness to all these dark colors, the data is lost. It's really hard for an AI to actually guess the original colors of all these pixels. But as you can see, Qwen Image Edit was able to restore this really well. In fact, I kind of like the colors of this more than the original photo. And then for your information, here is the result from Flux Kontext Dev. I also tried different prompts like correct the brightness and contrast and white balance of the photo, but it still wouldn't give me anything close to a good result. So at least for this example, Qwen Image Edit is the clear winner. Alright, here's another tricky test. So here is an image which I deliberately blurred out. For your reference, here is what the original image looks like. And then for the prompt, I simply wrote deblur this image. Now actually for both Qwen Image Edit and Flux Kontext Dev, both were able to deblur this very well. Again, this is a very tricky prompt because the faces are all blurred out, so the AI basically doesn't have this data. It really has to try hard and guess what these faces actually look like. So, the faces for both generations aren't like the most accurate, but honestly, it's really hard to pick a winner between both these generations. I think both are pretty good in terms of deblurring a photo. Here's another really tricky test. Here's my original photo, and I basically want to get it to zoom in and create a new photo with way more details of this bird. So for the prompt, I wrote zoom in on the bird, ultra sharp details of the bird, professional photography. And here's the result from Qwen Image Edit. Look at how crazy sharp the details of this bird are. Like, the feathers are so damn sharp. This is really good. And then for your reference, here is the generation from Flux Kontext Dev. Notice that the details aren't as great. It does seem to have kind of a plastic pastel vibe to it. So not as detailed or realistic as Qwen Image Edit. Although I do have to say that the pose of the bird in Flux Kontext Dev matches more closely with the original photo. You can see the bird is actually kind of leaning forward. Next up, here is my input photo. You can see the edges are all messed up. There are folds all over this photo. It's a pretty damaged old photo. And for the prompts, I wanted to colorize and restore this photo, like it was taken in modern day. And honestly, both image editors did pretty well. In terms of actually accurately portraying the face, I would have to say Flux Kontext Dev is a bit more accurate. Notice like the eyes of this man and the eyes of this girl are more aligned with the input photo. However, in terms of making it look like it was taken in modern day, I would have to give the point to Qwen Image Edit. Like, this photo does look more like a modern photo, whereas the generation from Flux Kontext Dev still has some vintage vibe to it. Again, it's a pretty close call. Let me know in the comments which one you prefer. Alright, next up, I'm gonna upload this character, and for the prompt, I got it to make a model sheet of this character on a white background, full body shot, front, back, and side. And here is what we get. Honestly, both image editors are really good. However, Flux Kontext Dev did fail to generate a back view of this character, whereas Qwen Image Edit actually generated both the back view and the side view. And notice that all the details are there, including the cat. So, with this tool, you can easily input any reference character and create multiple views of that character. And this could be really useful for like 3D modeling. Alright, here's an example which I know Qwen Image Edit would excel at. So here's my input photo, and then for the prompt, I got it to turn the text into Chinese. And here is what we get. The Chinese is perfect, plus it's also able to preserve the original font and style of the text. Now for Flux Kontext Dev, this Chinese is all gibberish. These characters don't even exist. So clearly in this example, the point goes to Qwen Image Edit. Especially if you want to translate certain images with text into Chinese, this is such an easy tool that allows you to do so in seconds. Here's another neat test that I tried out. Here's my input image, and for the prompts, I wrote, add a young woman standing in front of the text Qwen, but behind the text image edit. Stylish design on a light gray background. And here's what we get for Qwen Image Edit. Indeed, it generates a woman in front of Qwen, but behind image and edit. It also preserves the original font of the text. This is so good at understanding my prompt and knowing what exactly to edit. And then for your reference, here is the generation from Flux Kontext Dev. As you can see, it was unable to understand that it should put the woman in front of the word Qwen. So again, here the point clearly goes to Qwen Image Edit. Here's another thing I tried out. So using the same image, I wanted to add a cheetah pattern to the text Qwen and a red and white polka dot pattern to the text image, and then finally an iridescent pattern to the text edit. And surprisingly, both image editors got this correct. Although I would have to say I do prefer Qwen's generation of the cheetah pattern and the polka dots compared with Flux Kontext Dev. That's just my personal preference, but let me know in the comments what you think. And I'm actually surprised that Flux Kontext Dev was able to handle this as well. Alright, here is one of the most useful applications for these AI image editors, which is removing text and watermarks on an image. So let's say I have this photo with a ton of different watermarks. Well, let's get it to remove the watermarks. And here's what I got from Qwen Image Edit. You can see it absolutely nailed it. It removed all the watermarks on this image. Now, Flux Kontext Dev was also able to do the same thing, but notice that it also slightly changed the contrast of this image. So the blacks seem to be a bit darker than the original image. Whereas for Qwen Image Edit, it didn't adjust the brightness and contrast of the image. It knew to only remove the watermarks and not edit anything else. Here's another test I tried out. So here's some gameplay scene with a ton of different stats and buttons and icons. For the prompt, I just got it to remove the user interface. And here is what we get. And both generations were able to remove all this user interface from the scene. And for this example, I would have to pick the generation from Flux Kontext Dev. It seems to be way more detailed and the colors are more aligned with the original image. Whereas for Qwen Image Edit, the color balance seems to be a bit off compared to the original image. Speaking of software tools, you've got to check out DataImpulse, the sponsor of this video. Have you ever tried building something online and hit a wall because your IP got flagged or blocked? Well, that's where DataImpulse comes in. It gives you access to over 90 million IPs across 195 countries, so you can scrape the web, test tools, or run automations without getting blocked. What makes it powerful is its flexibility. You can rotate IPs or stick with one for longer sessions. Want full control over how long an IP lasts? You have it. It works with SOCKS 5 and HTTPS, so it fits into your setup with no hassle. The dashboard runs right from your phone. You can check usage, adjust your settings, and even manage affiliates. It's fast, clean, and easy to use. It costs just $1 for 1 GB of residential proxies, or $2 for 1 GB of mobile proxies. No subscriptions, no expiration dates, just pay as you go. If you're building anything online with automation, AI, or doing market research, DataImpulse gives you the backend support to do it without friction. Visit dataimpulse.com and try it out. Your first gigabyte is just $1. Alright, let's test out its ability to do style transfer. So here's my original photo, let's turn it into anime. And honestly, both image editors do pretty well at converting a photo into anime. It's just that, as you can see here, the anime style is kind of different between Qwen Image and Flux Kontext Dev. So Qwen Image does tend to produce these bigger vertical eyes like this, whereas the anime for Flux Kontext looks more like this. So it really depends on which style you're going after. Now here's another prompt. Turn everything into Lego. And in this example, Qwen Image Edit does a lot better. Like, at least most of the hands look like Lego hands. And the heads also look like Lego characters. Whereas for Flux Kontext Dev, it just looks way worse. Like, the hands should not look like this, and even the characters don't look Lego enough. So for this example, at least in terms of converting things into Lego, Qwen Image Edit is clearly the winner. Here's another interesting prompt that I tried out. Turn the photo into a depth map. And Qwen Image Edit actually did a pretty good job. This is indeed a pretty accurate representation of the closeness of all the objects in the photo. Now for Flux Kontext Dev, it completely failed to give me a depth map. This is more of a normal estimation than a depth map. And then finally, I also wanted to convert this into a watercolor painting, and here's what I got. Honestly, both results look pretty good, but in terms of the one that looks more watercolor, I would have to give the point to Qwen Image Edit, but that's just my subjective preference. Let me know in the comments what you think. So that sums up my tests with Qwen Image Edit versus Flux Kontext Dev. Honestly, both image editors are really good already, but Qwen Image Edit is just slightly better and more capable at certain things. It's slightly better at editing images and understanding your prompt, and of course it's also really good at micro-editing text or translating text while preserving the same font. Alright, next let's go over where you can actually use Qwen Image Edit. Now if you don't have a nice GPU or you don't want to run it locally, then there is an online method. I'll link to this chat interface in the description below. It's just chat.qwen.ai, and this basically functions like ChatGPT. You can select different Qwen models up here and ask it questions in natural language. It also has a deep thinking mode, and it also has this web search feature, so it can fetch the latest information from the internet. And they've just added this new feature called Image Edit. And here is where you can upload an image and then enter a prompt, and it will use Qwen Image Edit to basically apply the edit. And here is what we get. It indeed changes the background to a beach. And you can click here to download the image. Now this is just the online way to use it, but this probably has daily limits, plus this is censored. So to really get the most out of Qwen Image Edit, and if you want to use it offline for unlimited times, then here's how to do it. Now the easiest and most customizable and flexible way to use Qwen Image Edit offline is using ComfyUI. If you haven't heard of ComfyUI, this is like the most popular platform for generating AI images and videos offline. In this video, I'm going to assume you already have ComfyUI installed. If you don't have ComfyUI, definitely see this video where I go over step-by-step how to install it and how it works. It's actually pretty easy to use once you get the hang of it. Anyways, going back here, they've just released a workflow for Qwen Image Edit. So that's exactly what I'm gonna go over right now. So here are all the instructions. So let's scroll all the way down here to this model download step first. You'll need to click on each one and download it to your ComfyUI folder. So first of all, I'm gonna click on this Qwen Image Edit diffusion model, and this goes in your ComfyUI folder, in models, and then in diffusion models. You can see that I already have this over here. And note that this is 19 gigabytes in size, so it's gonna take a while to download. And because this is 19 gigabytes in size, you'll probably need more than 19 gigabytes of VRAM in order to run this. But if you don't have that much VRAM, don't worry, I'm also gonna show you another version later in this video where you can run this with lower VRAM. Anyways, going back over here, the next step is to also download this LoRa. So let's click on this, and this goes in your ComfyUI folder, in models, and then in LoRa's. As you can see, I already have this over here, and this is roughly 1.6 gigabytes in size. And then afterwards, we also need to download this text encoder file. So let's click on this, and this goes in ComfyUI, in Models, and then Text Encoders. You can see I already have this over here, and this is around 9 gigabytes in size. So depending on your internet speed, all these files might take a while to download. Anyways, finally we have this VAE, so let's click on this, and this goes in ComfyUI, in Models, and then in VAE. You can see that I already have this over here, and this is only 250 megabytes. Alright, after you've downloaded all 4 files, let's go ahead and start up ComfyUI. Now before doing anything, the first step is to update ComfyUI to make sure you have the latest version. So let's click on Manager, and then click Update ComfyUI. Alright, afterwards you should see this message, so let's click Close, and then just to be safe, let's click Restart. Alright, so after loading up ComfyUI again, let's go back to the instructions here, which I'll link to in the description below. Now, the nice thing is you don't need to program the workflow yourself. You can just drag and drop this pre-built workflow onto your interface. So let's right-click on this and then click Save Link As, and this is going to download a JSON file. Now, you can download this wherever you want. I'm just going to download it in my ComfyUI folder. So let's click Save. And then going back to ComfyUI, all we need to do is drag and drop the workflow onto the interface. And here is what we get. Pretty simple. Everything is pre-built for you already. Now the first step is in this component, make sure you click on the drop-down for each model and select the appropriate model. So for example here, let's select Qwen Image Edit, and then over here, let's select Qwen 2.5 VL, and then down here, let's select Qwen Image VAE. Now you can just edit images like this, but it's going to be pretty slow, and that's because it's going to take around 20 steps to generate a decent image. I'll talk about what this steps thing is in a second, but instead what we're going to do is actually click on this lower component and then press Ctrl B to unbypass this. And down here, you can click on this dropdown and select Qwen Image Lightning 4 steps. And this basically allows you to generate images in only 4 steps instead of 20 steps. So this basically speeds up the generation process by like 5 times. So let's set this step count to 4 over here. Alright, next let's go over this entire workflow. So over here is where you would upload an image. For example, I'm going to upload this image, and then over here is where you would enter your prompt on how you want to edit the image. So for example, let's write turn the car blue, and then afterwards it goes through this K-sampler, which you should be familiar with if you've watched my previous ComfyUI videos. So let's go over these really quickly. The seed is basically the starting point of your image. Now, there could be, in theory, an almost infinite number of ways to turn this car blue, and this seed number is just one of many ways. Now, usually you just set the seed to random, but if you set the seed to the same number and you keep all the settings the same, then you're going to generate the exact same image as before. And then the step count is basically how many steps you want the AI to go through before outputting your final image. In general, the more steps you have, the higher quality your image would be, but of course it's going to take longer to run. And at a certain point, if you run it for too many steps, you're going to get diminishing returns, and by that point, you're just going to be wasting compute. Conversely, if you set the step count to too low of a number, then it's going to run faster, but at the sacrifice of some quality. And then for CFG, this is basically how literally you want the AI to follow your prompt. And then sampler name and scheduler, these are basically different algorithms to generate the image. Feel free to play around with all these different algorithms. There are like subtle differences depending on which one you choose. And that's pretty much it. Now, note that there is a note down here which recommends the optimal settings you should use depending on whether you use this 4 steps LoRa over here. Now, because we've enabled this node so it can run faster, here it's saying we should set the step count to 4 and the CFG to 1. So going back here, indeed the step count is 4, and then let's also set the CFG to 1. And that's pretty much it. Let's click Run to edit our image. And here is what we get. Let me just drag this output image over here so you can compare the before and after. And note that this is a save image node, so the image is automatically saved in your ComfyUI's output folder, as you can see here. And that's basically how you can use the official ComfyUI workflow for Qwen Image Edit. Super simple. Now, if you have low VRAM, then this section is for you. Fortunately, the open source community moves really fast, so we already have some quantized versions of Qwen Image Edit, and these were made by this user called Quanstack. So I'll link to this page in the description below, and then over here you can see a table of the estimated VRAM requirements to run each of these different quantized variants. So if you have 16 gigabytes of VRAM, then you can probably use any of these models. Or if you have 12 gigabytes of VRAM, then you can use these ones. Or if you only have 8 gigabytes, then you can try this one. So for me, just as an example, let's click on Q2 and then click download. Now this goes in ComfyUI, in models, and then in unit. You can see I already have this here. And that's pretty much it. Now, going back to this workflow, instead of loading a diffusion model, you need to load a GGUF model. And this requires you to first install some GGUF components. So first, let's click on Manager, and then click on Custom Nodes Manager. Now, in case you don't have these GGUF nodes, at the top here, simply search GGUF, and you basically need to install this one, ComfyUI GGUF by City96. And even if you have it installed, you need to update to the latest version. So for me, I'm gonna press try update. All right, afterwards it says restart required, so let's click restart and then click OK. All right, afterwards, going back to this workflow, instead of load diffusion model, let's double click anywhere on this interface to insert a new node. And then here, let's search for unit loader GGUF, and you should see this one. So let's select this, and then in the dropdown, you would simply select the quantized version that you downloaded. In my case, it's the Q2 version. And then afterwards, we simply drag this connection over here, and it would automatically disconnect this one. And that's pretty much it. That's how you can run Qwen Image Edit with lower VRAM. So let's click Run. And here is what we get. Now notice that there is some clear noise and degradation in quality for this Q2 version, which is the smallest and most quantized version, but of course it's compressed so that you can run it with lower VRAM. So that sums up how you can get Qwen Image Edit up and running locally on your computer, even if you have low VRAM. And that sums up my review and tutorial on Qwen Image Edit. I hope you found this video helpful, especially the comparison between this and Flux Kontext Dev. Let me know in the comments what you think of this, and if you run into any errors while installing this, welcome to copy and paste the error message in the comments below, and I'll try to help you troubleshoot as much as possible. As always, I will be on the lookout for the top AI news and tools to share with you. So if you enjoyed this video, remember to like, share, subscribe, and stay tuned for more content. Also, there's just so much happening in the world of AI every week. I can't possibly cover everything on my YouTube channel. So to really stay up to date with all that's going on in AI, be sure to subscribe to my free weekly newsletter. The link to that will be in the description below. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.